Welcome, everyone, to the Weiss Wealth and Wisdom podcast, where we tackle complex and important financial topics to bring more financial literacy to you. My name is Carl Weiss, and I am a residential loan officer at Fairway Independent Mortgage Corporation. My NMLS number is 263293. I'm licensed in 20 states, and what we are discussing here today specifically applies to our friends, family, and clients who reside in Arizona. My host and I are discussing today. The topics are general in nature. We're not giving, specific advice, tax, legal, mortgage, or otherwise. Of course, if you have specific questions, please reach out to us individually, and we can tackle those together so we can give you specific advice that applies directly to you. Joining me today is Heidi Thompson from Lifeguarding Legacies, PLLC. And she can be reached at is the email address okay, Heidi, at the info at lifeguardinglegacies.com or via phone at the office at 602-529-1827. Welcome, Heidi.
Thank you.
How are you today?
Thank you. And thanks for having me on here. I'm very well. I'm
Excellent.
excited about our topics today. It should be great.
I agree. I think we're going to cover a lot of things today. So if you're joining us, please understand that as we dive into the topics today with Heidi, she's going to catch us up to speed as much as possible in estate planning topics. And we will, be covering a lot of things, and we're going to try to make some short, more encapsulated segments. And then we're going to dive deep because a lot of these concepts are, quite frankly, too big to handle in a real short format. So that's sort of the direction that I think that we're going to take. And of course, I'm going to start with my shameless plug. Okay. So Heidi literally wrote the book on estate planning in Arizona. And, I think that it's one of those things that, in addition to these kind of topics, through the platform of video and audio, there's no real substitute than getting the book, reading it, and seeing what actually applies to you, and then reaching out with questions. So, and for those that as we reference parts in the book, there's a couple times that I'm gonna jump in, and I have a couple of favorites. And so, personally, for me, in chapter 4 in your book, the thing that hit me really hard, and I think it's just fantastic, is you made a comment that just hit home with me. And it said, your quote was, "I use my counseling degree more than my law degree." And I know how that, that personally, I have that feeling almost every day.
Yes.
And, we go from these, it can go from long range goal planning, budgeting counselor, marriage counselor,
Yes.
trusted friend. Oftentimes, there's several of those are in the same conversation, right?
Hmm.
So I love your focus on educating people, and I love that so much. So oftentimes I think we're all thought of in that sales role, and certainly in the mortgage space, it's based on what we call units or transactions or deals. And my experience is that, the true professionals out there like yourself, Heidi, we offer much more than that, right? We have to teach people what it is, what the options are, and then help sort of guide them through this maze of whatever the maze is, whether it's a home loan or, in this case, estate planning, right?
Well, and in your world, for most people, this is their very biggest investment they've ever made is the home
Right.
that they're buying. And so, it's a huge milestone in their lives, and they're really trusting you to help make sure that it's affordable and all of those things. Mine is so similar. I mean, it's not as exciting as the new house because I'm dealing with death and incapacity and these horrible issues nobody really wants to talk about.
Correct.
But we're going to this place where they really do have to trust you because they're sharing so much of what's going on in their family so deeply to be able to make the right decisions to get on paper to take care of everybody. And so there people always say that your bartender and your hairstylist know the most about you. I would add estate planning person and mortgage person to that list.
Absolutely. And, I mean, I was talking today, I was kind of laughing with a client that's been, I say, you go from client to fa extended family with me. And he said, yeah, he goes, stuff that I've done that I've told you that my wife doesn't know. And I say, there's very few people where you can really, open the kimono and share those kind of details that are super sensitive, right? And, just have that in a transactional, you know, arena. It's got to be a lot deeper than that. And that's really, I think, what we're going to accomplish today is really help people understand that the big scary topic really kind of applies to everyone, right? I think that the 10,000-foot view is estate planning sounds complex. Sometimes it can be, but taking no action is not really a good viable solution. Is that a fair
Well, the
lay?
reality is you're going to pay for it now or you're going to pay for it later.
Yeah.
Either it's coming out of your kids' pockets with probate and hassles, and they're going to look back at you and say, why didn't they take care of things?
Hmm.
Or you're going to take care of it up front, solve a whole world of problems both during your life, during any period of incapacity, and on death, and leave the kids with a nice package to unwrap.
Yeah,
It's you kind of got a choice, but one is generally preferable.
I agree. So with that, let's jump into the first segment, and we're gonna just kind of jump into some of these topics, hard and heavy, and then we'll
Okay.
break up the segments so that if people want to watch the entire series, hopefully they will. And if they need a quick refresher on some of the topics, they can pick and choose like a buffet. So let's just start off with kind of the elephant in the room, right? What is the difference between a will and a trust?
Probably my favorite question to answer. And if I do it right, the most meaningful question I can answer. So a will is just what you see on TV. On TV, they glamorize it and make it something that's read in a lawyer's office where all the family's gathering around with bated breath, waiting. Um, in reality, it's not nearly as dramatic as that. It's usually left in a safe or on a shelf or in a drawer at the person's house, and the person who's cleaning up finds it.
Right.
But, but a will is your statement of where you want your stuff to go when you die. That's really all it is. You can also put in there if you have children that are minor children, that is also the document that says where your kids can go. And it's also the document that you can say where your pets are going to go. But really, that's all a will accomplishes. It's a very, here's my stuff, here's my people, this is where they're going to go.
Cool. So, so entry
Sorry.
level. So if we're gonna rank this kind of like, on a scale, this sounds fairly straightforward, right? They're fairly simple to do. I would also guess they're, somewhat less expensive.
So generally, if a lawyer's going to do a will, they're probably going to be half the price of a trust because it's half the amount of drafting that's involved
Okay.
in creating it. It's half the amount of work and you don't have to fund it. It's a whole different asset process if you're using a will than it is if you're using a trust. So
Okay.
when you think about a will, though, in reality, what it is, I know we talked about the family finds it and it tells you how to distribute the things, and all of that is true. But I really want you to think about a will as a letter to the court telling the court how to distribute your things. Because if any of the things you have are of value, your kids aren't just going to be able to take over your house. Sounds like they could, but in most cases, that's not how it works. You're going
Right.
to have to probate the house to get it to go to your kids if you didn't do any planning on the front end to make the house go to the kids. So
Okay. So
that, and we'll talk about probate later, but
okay.
by putting in the will, I want the house to go to the kids, if that's your planning, you just said, court, I want the house to go to the kids through court.
Okay. Excellent. And that's all on the will side.
That's on the will side.
Okay. And then
So
what
on
would a
the
short description of the trust be?
Sure. Well, I'll almost get there. One more thing. If I'm doing will based planning with a client, even though the will have the words of where everything's going, the real goal is that nothing is passing under the will at all.
Okay.
Everything you own has a beneficiary assigned to it so that the court never sees your letter. So
Got it.
your house has a beneficiary deed, your car has a beneficiary form, your accounts have payable on death designations so that the court never has to see this letter because there's no asset that needs to go through the court.
Okay.
So if I'm doing will-based planning, that's how we do it. So the will really doesn't do anything other than summarize what everything else is going on.
Could somebody think of that then sort of like a safety net?
It- Absolutely. And if we're doing a trust, it really becomes a safety net.
Okay.
Okay. Now let's move into
What's
the
that?
trust.
What's a trust?
Ooh, all right. A trust is very different. A trust is not a letter to someone. A trust is a contract with yourself. It's such a weird legal idea, but the idea is that you are the grantor that's granting things into the trust, and you are the trustee that's holding things inside your trust for your benefit during your lifetime, for your benefit during incapacity, and once you're gone, for the people that are your beneficiaries. So it's a contract between you and you to do these things. And it
Okay.
has great instructions for the person that takes over as the trustee when you're gone. When we have a trust, unlike the will where we're trying to make everything pass to beneficiaries outside the will, the exact opposite. We're trying to title almost everything you own into the trust so that it never goes to probate. It's not a letter to them, it's a contract that you made with yourself that your kids are going to see. And as long as we do a good job of getting everything in the trust, it never gets seen by a court unless someone decides to dispute something, and that's a whole different topic.
Okay.
But it's really cool because the trust is revocable and living. Revocable meaning you can change it while you're alive and have capacity. Living mean it doesn't die. So it's the one that's got the title for all of your things. So when you die, it didn't. It lives past you, which is why it doesn't go to probate.
I love it. Okay. So let's wrap this up real quick for this segment to give people
You
just a
got
quick
it.
overview, and then we're going to jump into a little deeper dive, I think, on this because there are obviously many thoughts that I have and questions coming our way. So
Devils in the details, right?
absolutely, so true.